Matt DeClerc, Dr. Matt DeClerc, Emergency Medicine.
Doctor, please.
Aaron Bright, Emergency Medicine. We're here to do something a little bit weird today. It's a little odd.
Weird. I
It's
read
not.
EP Monthly all the time.
I
That's
read
not
EP
weird.
Monthly all the time too, and
It's
not
like the
just
only
on
one
the
that's
toilet.
short enough and kind of talks to me. It's not.
Thank
There's
you.
no big data charts. I like
That's
it.
right. I like
There's some
it too.
stories in there. I don't
It
have
is
to
my
look at the
favorite.
results section.
If I had to ask you which one of these newspapers that come to your house is actually worth reading, I would say EP Monthly. And actually, I'm not kidding about that, even though we're working with them today. But I like it, and I think it's super independent. It doesn't really have like a Big Brother aspect to it, and so I'm into it.
Yeah, I like the stories in them too.
I do too. So
ones that
what we're
relate
doing
to
today, which may be the first of a series, is we have a sneak peek, a preview, as if I was like on the Academy or something.
Yeah,
and
like
I got
for
like
your
an
discretion
advanced
only, for your
version.
eyes only.
That's right. Of like
So
Cars
you can technically
5.
get in trouble for actually sending that to me, which you did.
Probably I
'Cause I
would
was
be in
kinda
trouble.
wondering,
Yeah,
I was
don't
like-
tell Plaster. So what we're doing is we have an advanced copy here. We've got November 2017, and we got to read it. And what we're going to do is kind of go back and forth and chat about what's in there because it actually is a pretty cool one. And it happens to be on the heels of one of the most amazing and horrible things that's ever happened in the country, which is that Vegas shooting.
Yeah, the Vegas shooting.
Yeah, so
the,
they did
the
something.
largest mass shooting in our history, actually.
Largest mass shooting in our history, which we'll get into when we cross that. But like, I get a mixture of emotions with that thing that is that I can't even quite pin down. I'm angry, obviously, at the guy. You're disgusted by humanity. You're like sad for all the victims, and I'm so impressed by what happens in emergency medicine when that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
That I'm apt. I am wont to say that these guys are heroes all the time. I say it all the time. Completely not BS. I totally believe it. And when this kind of stuff happens, people step up, see a gajillion patients, the training kicks in, everything's. I mean, that part gives me goosebumps. So.
You know, the ones for me that totally blows my mind is the law enforcement. They're like,
Yes.
oh, there's a guy up there shooting an automatic rifle. Let's go up there
Yeah.
with our
Yeah.
9mm Glocks. We got to do something.
Yeah.
Take them out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what mindset? That's
Yeah.
a crazy mindset.
Run toward the danger.
and
yeah.
get rid of the danger for everyone else. Like, could you imagine the adrenaline?
That's
terms
an
of that?
EMS
Like,
thing too. The same thing for EMS,
Yeah.
right? Like building explodes, they go right towards it, you know. So anyway, we're gonna flip through some of this stuff. It's a really good issue. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I actually think it's laid out very well. I don't know who their designer is, but I'm taking
should
it. You know
talk
who
to
else we have in the room here? We have
Ben.
unmiked Ben Bonner,
Ben
who is
Bonner,
also not a
our
physician, but
producer.
I'll be referring to him all the time, and he's doing
Ben
the
and his
wave
strep
right
throat.
now. Ben has strep throat. Ben has infected several people in his life, but I don't want to get into that or how he's done it.
That's why I didn't say kiss him hello today.
This is part of the title page of the issue this time, just showing you what we were kind of talking about. That's just, the stats are amazing to me. 215 gunshot wounds, 8 GSWs to the chest, 10 GSWs to the head, 13 GSWs. I mean, like,
That was at one hospital. That was one hospital.
That's insane
Not
to
all
me.
the other hospitals. It also probably got some patients.
I have Eckstein in my head, Mark Eckstein, who some people know, who's like a really well-published dude in EMS, and he also seems to be at every emergency in the country.
He just drives around Los Angeles.
I think he's got a Humvee. He's just like,
with his,
it's possible.
his scanner on, and he's just like, I'm waiting. I'm gonna do it.
It's possible that he is causing most of these disasters just so he can be there first on the scene. But I'm not going to get into it. But he's in my ear as how I remember learning from him how you black tag people, and I'm thinking, I hope we never have to. I mean, that sounds like a good system, but I don't really want to use it. These people must have been right in the middle of that.
Yeah, no, it reminds me like Celentano with all his little, trailers out front. Like, oh, tense up, let's do it.
Yeah, when this kind of stuff happens, I actually, it reminds me, and we had a big at our company. By the way, we're Hippo Education. I should say that. Here at Hippo Education, we actually have a Slack channel. Anybody who's got a big team should use Slack. It's an amazing way to sort of communicate between these teams. But we've got now a channel called, I forgot what I called it. I think I called it Insane Prepper or something. What was it?
HippoEducation.com.
Yeah, well, that one. Yeah, no, but I mean, I called the Slack channel. I called this discussion forum Crazy Preppers or something. And everybody came out of the woodwork, and we got a whole truckload of preppers. And
a world like zombie apocalypse preppers.
Zombie apocalypse, but what about this? Like having something in your car as an emergency doctor, like having a bag valve mask and a little bit, like just a kit. I don't know.
Yeah, my kit is like the little CPR mask that my mom gave me when I first started driving.
Yeah.
And a couple gloves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought about extending it, but I was like, well.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to keep my stuff in the hot sun, but yeah, I've got some gloves.
Somebody's
going
to tell us. Somebody's going to write in and say what it was, but like, and you see an ER where they they have a pen and they jam it
Yeah.
into the crike and they stick a tiny plastic tube in
And they
straw
breathe.
and then they
They have a Crike keychain actually that I
Do they?
looked into once. Yeah, because I'm like, oh, Crike, that's an airway thing. I've got kids now.
Yeah.
It costs like $130.
That's just
Little piece of metal that you can
scam.
unscrew, screw. So I was like, yeah. I
I'm not
thought
having
about it and then I didn't.
So let's roll through some of these things. So there's an amazing amount of information in this thing. It's free, and I think that's impressive. And I sound like I'm a commercial, but I'm not being paid for this. But I do think it's impressive that it's free, and I've enjoyed it for a long time. So it's cool to be doing this. So this person, Judith Tintinelli, I think she's famous.
I don't know. I recognize that name for something.
It rings a bell. I don't know
I read her
exactly what it is,
novel once.
but maybe she's the most famous emergency physician in all of time.
She's definitely got one of the best textbooks.
It's
the one that you can actually get through a chapter.
Yeah.
And maybe, hopefully, not fall asleep as a resident.
I think she wrote the whole thing by herself.
You think so?
No, I don't.
I didn't see any editors
No,
in
I'm
there.
pretty sure that's not the case. But she wrote an article. This one's called "Polish Residents on Hunger Strike Highlight a Specialty in Crisis," and it's a very interesting read because she's talking about kind of the conditions of all of these laborers around the world that are newer to emergency medicine in the United States and how they're sort of getting pushed around. And she gives a little
like
bit
the
of a history.
90-hour workday for these residents. Aaron, that just really upsets me because when I was a resident,
Yeah, in the snow.
that was like typical.
Yeah.
We were called residents because we resided in the hospital. So
yeah.
I don't know what they're complaining
It's
about.
100% not true what you're
90
saying.
days straight working.
90 hours a week is what she's saying is what they're doing.
Oh, okay, got it.
And they're thinking about they're talking about striking and they're talking about things, but she's interesting to me. I have mixed feelings about people who are like, I have mixed feelings about all the kinds of this stuff, but basically, I always say, and I mean it, I think we're underpaid. So she says in here, it's hard to say, and she says this someplace else too. We'll get to it, but
She did. Yeah, I remember that sentence. I was
right.
like, oh,
She's like, it's one of these high-priced people. You're being paid so much money. And I think I've been telling people this is my formula for a long time. It's 500, 500, 1,000, and a million. Okay, so that's like a Malin thing. 500, 500, 1,000, a million. If you got paid $500 an hour, and that would make you about $500,000 a year for about 1,000 hours a year. So that's like a really less than most ER docs work, more than most ER docs make, and more than they're paid on an hourly basis. But I think that's when he starts getting fair to me. And the reason why I think that is it's just relative to the rest of the medical community. But I really believe we're underpaid. I don't think anybody needs to make $500,000 a year. That's true. But I think if your job is to open the front door, have people potentially kick you in the face all day, and be resuscitating people from death, we should not be nickel and diming those people.
Yeah,
we should not be burning them out.
the way I always thought was people don't, complain to go get their BMWs fixed. So why are they complaining when they're getting their bodies fixed?
I don't know.
But I think the interesting thing on this story was that, these residents, they're having actually a hard time getting residents to go into emergency medicine in Poland because they're like, hey, if you come here, you're going to be working 3 days, 4 days in a row sometimes. We won't pay you a whole lot of anything.
Yeah.
And thank you very much. Why don't you come do this specialty?
That's right.
And the interesting part was it used to be a communist system with socialized healthcare. So it's almost like the public perception, too, is like, hey, we're used to our healthcare for free. And so it sounds like a system totally overburdened with a lot of abuses for their physicians. And
it's interesting. And I think Judith having all that clout, it's meaningful for her to talk about it. And I think that's cool that she's talking about it. Sometimes I don't want to care that nobody knows what we do. You kind of it feels like you're whining where you're saying, these people don't know what we do. Nobody knows what we do. We're working so hard. Nobody knows what we do. But to a certain extent, it's true. And I always thought that they should make a documentary called A Day Without an ER Doctor, which also foreshadows what we're talking about with, should doctors unionize in another article. But just imagine a day without an ER doctor. Bring all those specialists who used to do this in the 50s back down to take care of the orthopedics have to stay in the hospital, cardiology has to stay in the hospital. All these people we sort of avoid we don't make them come down to the ER anymore. I think the system would collapse, and I think people would appreciate it more.
Yeah.
But what do you do?
It's like a national holiday.
Like a national holiday.
A
day without an ER doctor where I go surfing.
A day without an ER doctor and ER nurses day. ER closed day.
ER closed day.
You can come and hang out.
Yeah. But it's just going to be beers. Yeah, it's going to be
around.
All right. I thought that was very cool. Anything else that you liked about that thing? I think
no, it sounds difficult to be in Poland. And the interesting part was they're actually, some of the Polish residents are moving to work in Britain where
Yes.
they're also unhappy, but they're like, well, they're less unhappy than we are here. So maybe it'd be interesting to just kind of listen to that voice, because sometimes residents just get blown away like, oh, well, the classic, when I was a resident, I had it so much harder. But I think that's crazy. It's just like millennials, right? People are always like, oh, these millennials. And I'm like, you got to listen to them, because I remember when I was a whatever, X or Y-er, and the older people are like, oh, you generation. I'm like, nah, that's not how it works. I don't want to be that guy, be like, just dismiss them.
That's right.
I think we should probably listen. There's stuff we can probably glean from it and maybe make things better.
Yeah, if you could kind of not be divisive, and you can dig into the stuff that makes sense at the younger level, and teach the stuff that makes sense still at the higher level. It's just that it's not really human nature to do that. You dig into what you did, and then you can't see it. But
what makes sense to me is enjoying your work and enjoying going to it. I think that's a big thing. Like, the more we can make this enjoyable, the better it's going to be.
It's so true.
Like, what do people burn out about the stuff that makes it not enjoyable?
Yeah.
Like, there's some things you can't avoid, but there are some system things you can definitely do to make it better.
There's a lot of people around the world, around the country, especially here in the U.S., that have looked at their little group, their little autonomous group, and have made some changes that are phenomenal. We get emails from people who, me and Jan Schoenberger did a shift work thing once, and for MRAP, and people called in and said, oh, what we did is we made the night shifts $612 an hour. Yeah. Then if you didn't want to do them, don't do them.
Yeah.
And then we made we only this many shifts per month, and everybody makes way less money, but everybody's super
so much
happy,
happier.
And like, you can work for 10 years longer and everything.
It's like scribes.
Yeah.
It's
scribes,
an investment, but think of the
double
outcome,
coverage.
Like, totally.
I mean, the worst thing for me to be in the community is have something happen that's super awesome even, and then turn around and like there's nobody there to high five you. And crickets. All right, very good. There's an interesting thing here. They call it crash cart. So real discussions discuss the month's healthcare headlines. And I don't know if anybody saw it. Did you see this video that they're talking about?
I did not see the video, but I read it, and I got to tell you, this was a tough one.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people have been there where they're just so frustrated, and they've maybe been abused.
Yeah.
And it's always a two-way street. Yep. There's always two sides to a story. Yep. So I'm not saying what this physician did was right. It's for sure unprofessional.
Right.
But in the end, like, we are also humans, and sometimes you can just push people a little too much, and they lose it.
I agree, and I did see the video. It was making its way around social media, and it's basically a guy who could have been any one of us, really, if we're really honest.
Yeah.
And he lost it, and they filmed this one piece of the interaction. But then over the course of the next few days, it came out that the patient and her daughter, who were on the film and filming, were pretty abusive to the staff. The police had been called. They had been, there's all this, and who knows how much of this stuff is true or not true, but the rumor has it they were pretty abusive and threatening violence against the staff. They've been kicked out of the ER and kept coming back. So you get half the story, and I think we should be very, very careful throwing anyone under the bus that's on a viral video somewhere. In the article, people say things that I think is true. That I felt this doc's fatigue, but his behavior will cost him dearly. That's true.
Yep.
Should it cost him dearly? I don't know. I think you have to be very careful saying, and something that I did, Judith and I usually are simpatico. We have dinner every once in a while. Yeah, she's famous. I'm not. What are you gonna do? But she says she gets tired of hearing these people complaining. We're pretty high paid, and we should be doing a better job being professionals. And true that we should always be doing a better job being professionals, but I'm not sure about the high paid. And I think anybody in a pressure cooker environment can lose their shiznit for no.
I mean, just look at politics. People lose and do make bad decisions all the time. We're human. I totally agree. You should be professional. We got to strive for perfection, but just also having that empathy of knowing, like, you know what? Sometimes you're not perfect.
Yeah.
And should your whole life be destroyed for it? No.
Yeah.
Right? Like, second chances, and people grow from those types of instances.
This next article is that's a tough image actually to look at, but is how to care for a racist patient. I thought this was a super interesting thing too. This thing is packed, and I thought this was very interesting. I don't know if you had any obvious thoughts on this thing.
Yeah, no, I thought that was interesting as well, because I feel like, well, when we think about racism, we often think about, white on other people racism. And
right.
So it's kind of difficult coming as a Caucasian male to be like, yeah, I've been a victim of racism. Like, have people yelled racial slurs at me, like woodpecker or whatever? Sure, but I mean,
by the way, I'll be saying
I didn't feel like, oh, I've been oppressed by you my whole life. Now you're calling me woodpecker. So it was almost interesting to kind of take it from a viewpoint of, well, I'm a Caucasian male, and that is interesting. Like, what if, my wife's Jewish, and what
Mhm.
if someone's like, well, I don't want to get treated by a Jewish doctor,
Yep.
right? So it was kind of it was an interesting take.
I see this a lot. I've seen it. You see it in the ER as a white male. The most often one you see is, can I have a female doctor?
Yeah.
Which is certainly not. It doesn't feel at all
Yeah, that doesn't feel racist
offensive,
or
right?
even
It's
sexist.
not at all. But I have had female doctors tell me that person wants a male doctor. I've had female patients and male patients who say this person wants a male doctor
That's
for
just
no good
because
reason.
they're hitting on you, Aaron.
That's probably what it
They
is.
thought
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
cute.
It's hard to
They're
hard
like,
to
I
resist.
want a male doctor
Yeah.
who's about 6 foot,
Yeah,
lightly
six
tanned.
6'3". Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 6
Go on.
foot 3.
Yeah.
I was just describing myself,
When I wear my
not you.
tightest white coat, that's when that happens to me. But I do think that there's a lot of interesting things.
You're not
one
6
of the
foot 3.
one of the interesting
that's
things.
a lie.
Are you 6'3"?
I'm 6 foot. You're not 6 foot 3.
I present 6'3".
In your brain,
don't
you're
you
like,
think?
I'm 6 foot 3.
Yeah,
What's up,
I know.
guys?
In here, I thought that some of the interesting things to me were, they were saying investigate your hospital's policy. I'm almost terrified to do that. I'm almost sure my hospital has no policy about my interaction in the ER with racist patients, but I will investigate it. That's a good point.
I've never heard of a policy.
And
you
then
kind of have to just treat them. You got no.
Yeah.
You're like, give them the choice. Like, look, I'm all you got.
Yeah. I mean, the legal issues they go through here, that's the part that to me, and they're doing a good job summarizing them, but they seem really murky. You know, it's like, you have a right not to be abused. You have a right, a minority or a patient who's having a racist thing happen to them has rights. A nurse that has a racist thing happening to them has rights.
Sure.
So that to me is a balance. So if you say, okay, I'm a KKK member and I'm not going to want that African American nurse in my room. If I'm the doctor and I say, yeah, could we just please get another nurse? What's
Who's
happening
getting
there,
abused,
right? I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I wonder
So-
if you can even relate it to, like, I mean, we get abused all the time, right? With
Oh, yeah.
drunk people, they're
Yeah.
abusive all the time. What do? We sedate them. Like, can you just sedate the racist till they're not racist anymore, and then
Yeah.
do what you got to do and move forward?
I think one of the quotes here was an African American, I think it was a nurse. It was an African American doctor. She said, I asked a friend who's a female African American what she would do if a patient requests another provider, and her response was that she would happily get them another doc if one were available. And she told me that her job was hard enough. The last thing she needed was a patient not trusting her or being angry with her because of the color of her skin. So it's like high road.
Yeah.
And I think as obviously you and I and Ben off camera, all being white dudes,
Yeah.
we're not experiencing this. And it's a good reminder to know how much this probably comes out in daily life when you're not who we are.
Yeah. No, but I think that's the response most doctors tend to have, is taking the high
sure.
road. Like, you don't see doctors punching their patients very often for the abuses that happen, right?
I have seen it.
I mean, occasionally it happens, especially when they're abusive to our nurses or our staff. I feel like that's when the doctors get real pissed. They're like, you can say whatever you want to me,
That's that
but
video.
do not make fun of Sally. All right? She just saved your life.
Take back what you said about Thor. So that's very interesting. And I think that's a good read to remind us of what the world is like. And I won't comment on whether I'm going to
It's very
buy
apropos, though. It's
Montana
apropos to our
property.
times.
It is very.
It's apropos to our times.
The next one that we went through here is the current state of refractory Vfib. So it's actually something medical. I thought that was super interesting. And maybe I'm not, maybe I've been in the kind of out of the academic zone for long enough that I haven't been talking about this stuff. So they go through three things: dual sequential defibrillation,
Yeah, it's like my coffee. Double shot.
double shot, beta blockade, something that went way out of favor in terms of cardiac
Which
care for a
I've
while.
never done.
And withholding epinephrine, which I think is interesting, and I have withheld epinephrine before, but not really for this reason. So it's kind of giving you more different options for how to handle actual refractory Vfib, because refractory Vfib, in my experience, is really distressing. And everybody probably has been up on the floor doing a code where you're 30 minutes in, and this
You're
person's
like,
in
shock,
Vfib. He's
shock,
not dead.
shock,
He's in
shock.
Vfib.
Yeah.
And when do you call it, and how do you do it? It's shock, shock, shock. And I've got 400 million pounds of epinephrine on him. We tried every one of those drugs whose mechanism of action I don't remember.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck. So
I
it was
think the
cool
double
just to
shock
see.
works, though, Aaron. I mean, we've used it a
Yeah.
couple times, and I think at least in our shop, the word is out, and people are
That's
double
great.
shocking. The beta blocker, I've never done, and would actually be a little concerned about doing. But hey, if they're not responding to
This
my
is
double
last
shock,
ditch.
then let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And the epi part, that I think about that every time, right? You're running a PEA code, you're running
Exactly.
PEA, and you're there. They got like 4 of epi.
Yeah.
And now you still like have PEA with a
Yeah.
very thready pulse, and you're
Yeah.
like, this person is clearly dead.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, how much is that epinephrine kind of giving me this, like, oh, well, maybe we should do something about that. Those little tiny.
I like stepping out of the ACLS world, here and there, and hearing people do it. I like that they wrote it up because there's a tendency to want to be careful with this stuff because you feel like you're on rogue, but we're not rogue. This is our thing. So rather than let that person die in a standard ACLS way over an hour, at least you should try something. And I agree with that epinephrine thing. This reminds me, you can find reasons why. Remember reading through all those cardiac meds, you had to make up some giant mnemonic, and it was like amiodarone this, and every one of them had a contradictory reason why you could never.
But don't give it in torsades.
They
didn't give that one, and then I don't know if it's torsades or VFib or VTAC. Anyways, I'm just giving it.
It's impossible, and so you memorize all this stuff, and you could. It's almost like a political. When you have an issue that really could be conservative or liberal, but they decided to take sides. Be like, it's like that. We decided amiodarone is going to work for this, and they're like, yeah, but doesn't amiodarone also do this? And they
doesn't matter.
Just don't look at that. Don't look at that right now. That's
the makers of amiodarone are paying us a lot of money, so we're going with
right.
amiodarone. That's how we decided.
That's right. So I thought that was cool. So you're doing the double shocks over there, huh?
Yeah, double shocks. Double shocks is, I think I had a resident on a code just recently. They're like, hey, refractory Vfib, any thought processes? And I said double shock and magnesium. And I don't know why, but I said magnesium. I think probably Malin or Squadron taught me that. And just give magnesium. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yep.
So
I think there's stuff to do.
But it's worked. We actually had one of our staff go into cardiogenic shock.
And you double shocked that person?
On shift.
Really?
And was being coded for over 20 minutes and double shocked them back, telling us to get this tube out of their throat.
And without
it was, I think we're all believers where we're from.
Without a HIPAA violation,
that was a save. That was probably the
guy.
save of county.
That is fantastic. Yeah. That's good to hear. I love that. All right, a little something there. All right, let's go on to what else we got here. Oh, I told you so. You get what I'm saying there? See what I did? See what I did? I told you so? Yeah, that's funny.
I looked at this eye, Aaron, and honestly, I was like, I don't see anything wrong. Like, what is it? What am I missing?
This is
a
basically
a chalazon.
Yeah. Did you say chalazon?
Chalazon.
I don't think you can say chalazon.
Chalazon
I'm pretty sure
is the sty that just gets overly aggressive. Now it's
I'm
stuck in your lid.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you that that's called a chalazion.
Ah,
if you say
come on.
chalazon,
Potato patata, tomato.
No, I don't think so because now you're spelling it completely different. That'd be like saying potato
Look,
grenade. Like that's
English
different
is my
thing.
second language. It's chalazon where I come from.
All right, well that's fine. You can do whatever you want. I don't want to. I don't want to infringe on your.
Well, I can't even say what the diagnosis is. I can't pronounce it.
No, we can't say it, but it's actually pretty cool. And I put it there because they've got some good visual diagnosis stuff in here. And actually, I shouldn't tell you, but I got this right. And I don't know how I got it right.
You got it right?
I got it right.
I thought pterygium, but then they said in the thing, it's like a pterygium, but not. I was like, damn it.
Well, now you've gone away. Now, I hope nobody's going to get...
we're not supposed to give the answer?
Alerted it. Well, they're supposed to flip to the other page.
Well,
Forget it. I'm going to let it go this time, but then next time, I don't know.
I didn't know we were supposed to tell him what's in the articles. That's what we're doing here.
Everybody has to just have to...
You don't need to read the in print. Just listen to us. You'll get all the salient points.
That's perfect. Yeah, because we're so good at this. So the next article in here is about calcium. Calcium, which is cheap and old, and they're talking about all kinds of stuff. There's a good...
I like their play on Got Milk.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Got Calcium. What'd you take out of this thing?
What I took out of this was, yes, the same stuff. Calcium chloride can mess up your veins if it's a really small vein, but in emergencies, who cares because they're dying, so give calcium chloride because that's 3 times the calcium gluconate. But if you don't have calcium chloride and you only have calcium gluconate, that's okay. Just give 3 vials instead of 1. So I was like, use what you got. Don't stress about the calcium chloride unless they're alive and perfectly well and you don't want to destroy their arm.
Yeah,
that's what I got out of that. Yeah. And you can use it also for hydrofluoric acid burns, which I see on a weekly basis. So I'm really glad that they reviewed that.
I am lousy with hydrofluoric acid burns.
I mean, that's like a dime a dozen in my shop. Hydrofluoric acid. Yeah, we
have
got
check
people
mark.
that use it as like deodorant. So we're just like,
we have
axial calcium,
temp,
please.
Fever, blood pressure, hydrofluoric acid. Yes, no. That's how, because we don't want to have to waste all the time.
Are you still taking your hydrofluoric acid?
Yeah, I'm taking it all the time. Yeah, I just drink it.
With your mercury antiperspirant?
My mercury infusion. Oh, we were talking earlier that I make every armpit that's ever existed yellow.
Yeah.
And these guys told me that it's
the aluminum.
It's aluminum.
Or the titanium.
I thought it might be mercury.
Titanium.
But that explains a lot of things. If there is mercury in my deodorant, it explains a lot of what my wife would say is wrong.
Slow spiral.
A slow spiral. Let's see what else we got here. How to confidently rule out traumatic arthrotomy of the knee. Just the fact that they said rule out traumatic arthrotomy. I don't think that's something I ever wrote before, but it's a much better way to write what I would write, which is like open
joint,
I guess I would say.
So
So
this is a good article because they actually pointed out that you have to put in, I think the literature usually says we're talking about knees here.
Yes.
Knees focused on knees. Usually about 90 cc's, which is a lot more than knee usually holds. They're actually they're like, no, you got to go up to 100, 150.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a ton.
Yeah.
But it just says it's a little more sensitive and specific. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
I thought so too.
I've always used 90, and so now maybe if I'm not getting anything at 90, I might go a little bit further. And
yeah, you can see
bump
it,
it up.
man. You can see it at 90 already, and seeing it at 150 is pretty big. But that's nothing's gonna go wrong.
It's almost like push enough in there till they really distend it, and it really, really hurts.
Yeah.
And then you almost release it like a water balloon where you just go.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, we're done.
That's a classic. That's a classic.
Negative.
Wear a shield.
Shoot it across.
It's like I remember the first time I saw somebody do that where they infused the joint, and then they said, well, then you poke this, and they were teaching me like this, and then you poke an 18 gauge. I like to use I hold the needle.
Yeah.
And it was like, we've got them right in there.
And that's how you know you're really there. You really want to feel it.
You really want to feel it. There's a little glucose in there.
Visualize it.
Yeah, it's good. Good times. All right, good enough for that.
That's how you get gonococcal in your eye, right? From the septic gonococcal
That's the only
joint.
way I know how to do it.
Yeah.
That's
how I got mine. It was not from my trip to Thailand. It was from that septic joint that got
Can I have
me
an
in the
edit
eye.
button? I need an edit button. This is interesting too. These are cases basically, and they're looking at EKG tracings, and this cause of syncope maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that better. Maybe I should say the word completely instead of just.
Yeah. Try it again. It's like chalaison.
Cause of syncope or syncope, as you'd probably say, may be both predictable and preventable. I'm not sure how much to go into this because,
I actually, to be honest with you, Aaron, I appreciated this one because it's talking about prolonged QT.
Tell me.
And whatever, prolonged QT, and hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, I get it.
Yeah.
But it was the drug one, right?
Yes.
Well, the drugs that prolong QT, because how often am I giving an antibiotic like zithromycin and Zofran like water, right? And maybe something else. Oh, the Zofran, sorry, the ondansetron. Ondansetron.
I see that you've got a problem now. I'm learning something about you.
English is my second language. So it's not about, as long as you get your point across.
It's fine. You go ondansetron. That's fine.
Ondansetron.
Yeah.
That's how I do people's names. I'm like, I don't remember that. They're like, hey, Mike.
Hey, what's up, bro, man?
Andrew.
But tell me, yes.
But no, because I'd be like, we do that all the time.
Oh yeah, Zofran's a really killer. It's interesting to me though.
Is it really?
No,
because I mean, the amount of times I've given a cocktail of 3 drugs that prolong your QT and nothing has ever happened because I've never seen it happen.
Yeah.
But I feel like one day, a resident brought it to me. They're like, yeah, Dr. DeClerc, like, and I was like, that's bullshit. They're like, well, actually, there was a recent review. I was like, okay, well. Maybe let's get an EKG. The hospital has a policy, actually, you have to get an EKG. I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll just tone down my irreverence to the prolonged QT.
Exactly. I think that's always, every time I learn about this stuff, and especially the prolonged QT, I get a little bit of humility back because it's like you said, I've had an N equals, I don't know how many, I must be in the thousands how many Zofran doses I've given. Has anybody had a long QT problem from that? No. But it's important to remember, especially if you've got somebody on the Haldol and you're going to add the whatever.
Yeah.
I think, despite the fact that it's never happened to you, you certainly don't ever want it to happen. Right?
Yeah, no, it changed the way I thought about it for sure. I'd be like, we get EKGs on a lot of people that were getting this anyways. And yes, the young people are probably going to be fine, but definitely in our older population, we have an EKG anyways. Just look at it. Like, look if the QT's long. So
I like that. Of course, what you're
going
to do is you're going to get that EKG. They're going to be in like, some
super
borderline
long
third
QT,
degree heart block,
Van
Van Cleef syndrome. Yeah, that's all right. That's our job. All right, very good. Now there's a couple cases.
Yeah, the second case was basically the drug one. The first case was a severe hypokalemia and hypomagnesemia and hypocalcemia in a alcoholic.
That's right.
So
we'll
it was the second case that really spoke to me.
Yeah, that's why I like
despite my alcoholism.
Now here's something we hear a lot about: push dose pressors.
Yeah.
Put out there, in my experience, by the infamous Scott Weingart. And he is hard to not take that dude seriously. Like, he knows how to present something.
Except when they call him Dr. Hollywood.
Dr.
I'm like,
Hollywood.
He's not from Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because I'm from Hollywood.
I would go ahead and say that he shuns Hollywood.
Yeah. It's almost like he's like totally East Coast guy.
Yeah,
I don't know where he lives, but I feel like he lives somewhere on the East Coast.
I'll tell you right now that he so wants to not be called Dr. Hollywood that when he hears this, he'll be angry that we said that they call him Dr. Hollywood.
Well, you're not Dr. Hollywood, all right, Dr.
Yeah.
Weingart.
Yeah.
You're Dr. East Coast something.
That's
push
right.
dose presser. You're Dr. Push dose presser.
Dr. ACE subway line, but Dr. Push dose pressers, and he's it's something that I never would have tried if I didn't know him. So this article says pushing back on push dose pressers, but you read this thing and you were saying to me
it was a pretty soft pushback. It was basically like, hey, you can do this, and it's awesome, and I love it because it's so easy to do, right? It's like, oh, just take the normal saline, 10 cc's, drop out 1 cc, put in a cc of your epi stuff, you're done, and now you can just titrate that up. But their main point was, hey, be careful, because when doctors start mixing up medications and not labeling stuff and not doing it through pharmacy, that's how errors happen, and people do die, obviously, from drugs. So the message I got from him is like, yeah, do it. It's awesome, but be careful. Maybe label it. Dr. Weingart says that all the time. He actually has a specific label for it. So that's the message I got, not like don't use it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think it is a really important point, although stupid. It's kind of the same thing. It's like, don't lose that wire.
Yeah.
You know, like you can say it 100 million times. I got it. I won't lose the wire. And then I'm like, don't. Where's the wire? Like you have to prioritize what
I
you're
can see
looking
that happening. Be like, oh no, I'll flush that for you with my flush. I have right here. Oh, my flush of epinephrine.
So like, I'm sorry. How do you like your 295
your heart just exploded.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. To call your insurance provider. So that was a quick one, and I thought that was cool to look at.
That was good. It's a nice. I always like it when they review that.
I do too. Now, this is a cool one, and I'm going to give you, they rolled through a bunch of myths. 4 myths, but 4 EMS myths busted.
Now you're talking like me.
They could
I'm
be in like a speech therapy, that title. But EMS is often criticized for not having the same evidence as hospital-based medicine. Backboard seat colors, even ALS, have been criticized as not efficacious. They're going to debunk all of these EMS myths and examine some of the evidence, and that's pretty cool. So the first myth was prolonged CPR and out-of-hospital cardiac arrest does not lead to improved survival.
Yeah.
True or not
I
true?
would say yes, that is true.
Usually not.
But it depends on your patient population.
Yeah.
So kids, prolong the CPR the hell out of it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
A young person with a 50-year-old MI, prolong the CPR the hell. A 99-year-old from a nursing home in septic shock, like, okay.
That's kind of a common sense one. And don't, like, this one I'm not sure. You do it where you don't use it to stop earlier than you think you were stopped.
Yes.
Right? You don't say, this never works. Then All right, so the next myth.
And the prolongation, to be honest with you, is like 20 minutes and then 37 minutes was the longer one, right? Which I'm like, 37 minutes, not that.
That's not going to kill you.
An ambulance ride, an ED visit.
I'm sure 17 minutes of doing that it feels like eternity when you're in the middle of it, but yeah, I agree. The myth, if the Cincinnati stroke scale is negative, there likely isn't a stroke. That one, I think, is that a myth?
You know, I think we do this all the time.
I do too.
Cincinnati's a great screening tool for the lay public and maybe for your EMS system. But who did you have a stroke? Like, you're like, oh, this might be a stroke. They're complaining of like numbness in your toe. You're thinking of stroke, but you're like, well, your face isn't drooped, and you don't have slurred speech, and you don't have.
You go on your way.
You don't have a stroke. You don't have a stroke.
So it's classically it's sensitive, but not as specific. I think people probably know that, but that's an important one.
That's why we do thorough neuro exams. That's the whole point of that, because we definitely see strokes that don't have all those signs all the time, right?
Absolutely.
There's complex strokes, and so
Busted.
I think that's more for screening.
Yeah, agreed.
Tool.
Myth: sublingual nitro is a mainstay for chest pain, but inferior MIs too, should get fluid, not nitro. I think that's a very interesting one.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with it completely.
Yeah,
I think it depends on the blood pressure.
They say the bottom line, there's a paucity of data, but the latest study seems to say that nitro is just as safe in inferior MIs as any other. It's true. I mean, I have made a mistake, and there's been nitro being given,
and they were fine,
and they were okay.
But I've also made the opposite mistake.
I have too. It's fluid responsive. I mean, I don't know. It's if you really.
The other part is they say there's a paucity of data for this, and then there's this one new study. I'm like, okay, well, am I going with the paucity or with the new
They do
study?
the right hedge here too, which is basically like, I dare you to find a cardiologist that says like, that's cool. Like, it's probably fine.
I read EP Monthly.
I think that's right. I would say pick your battles.
Despite the paucity of data.
And they're not saying that either. So I would say, to
clinical judgment, I think.
Yeah, if you want to fight your cardiologist on that one, more power to you.
Because it would make a little bit of sense, right, Aaron? If you had a really high blood pressure and inferior MI, like, the nitroglycerin might actually help perfuse that area. So, I don't know. I think clinical judgment and being more wary than not.
Yeah, I agree with that. So there's a last one, and you like this one. D10 should be the gold standard for hypoglycemic adults. Is that the myth? And is it busted?
I like that one because like, oh, is that even a myth?
Yeah.
Like, I never heard of it. I was like, no, D50 is the gold standard where I'm from, unless you're doing peds.
Yeah.
So who brought up this? But I guess there's studies in the past for D10. So I'm glad that they're debunking that myth because that sounds ridiculous to me. They're like, oh, hypoglycemic, almost dying. Let's just give them like a grain of sugar instead of the packet of sugar.
Yeah, I don't really understand that either. And I actually grew up in county. Have you ever given D10 to an adult?
Nope, never. I don't think we even stock it.
They're talking about
a
article that was written in EP Monthly in the January 2015 or in 2015, arguing that D10 might be safer on a physiologic level. But they're saying, look, it's all right. Bottom line, there's a handful of studies saying
it's like the calcium
D10,
chloride.
Yeah, right.
You got an emergency, go big.
All right. To clerk. You ready for the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do EPs need to unionize?
Dun,
Now, this to me speaks to like I get bananas about this stuff, and this gentleman is making. He actually did he's not bananas. Mark Ryder and Thomas Tobin, and they write very eloquently about what it means to have a union and how unions can help you and how they don't. But I could talk forever about it, and it has to do also with the Polish thing that Tintinelli was talking about.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me. Of course, it's very hard to find physicians who are willing to sort of unionize in order to strike.
Sure.
And they mention a really interesting thing that happened in history that I didn't know about, called PRN, the Physicians for Responsible Negotiation, which is a union.
Yeah.
And that it shut down.
Striked.
Yeah, it
in
shut
their
down.
44-year history or something.
Yeah, that's right. And so it shut down very quickly. So they made it in 1999. Only 40 physicians had signed up, and 5 years later, and so they shut it down. So like striking emergency doctors, it's never ever going to happen. But it is interesting to me how hamstrung you can be as a sort of an industry or a career or and when you don't have the threat of saying, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And we're never going to do that. You could basically, I think you could take these ER doctors in the universe and say, we're cutting your salary in half. I dare you not to show up for work. And we'd show up for work. And I kind of think that sucks, and it kind of makes me proud of us.
I mean, I think it's the idea of unionizing to have one strong voice as individuals. I'm all for that. But well, maybe you don't have to strike. Maybe you can just have other concessions and be like, well, we're just going to take an hour off for lunch.
That's right. I'm going to be allowed to pee.
And what are you going to do then? We're going to take an hour off. We're still here. We're just taking an hour off for lunch.
That's right. No, he makes a good case for that, actually, in that there's arguments to be made that having a nice, solid union, if you will, however you feel about unions, certainly doesn't imply that you're going to end up striking.
I mean, I think the biggest thing from this that doesn't concern me, that strikes a chord with me, is like, I feel like as physicians, we've lost our voice a little bit. Like, we used to be at the top of the medicine.
Yeah.
It was us making decisions, and now I feel like we got someone else making decisions, and I feel like it should be easy enough for us to be like, no, we went to medical school. We are the doctors and the nurses. This is how it should be done. So I'm wondering if that's ever going to come back. If we're going to just step up the plate and be like, screw you. I'm not taking I'm not taking your shit.
I'm not taking any more. Well,
hopefully that happens.
I hope so too. And I think the reason why it should happen is because this kind of stuff happens. And this is a special report, which bottom line is just read this thing, make you proud to be an emergency person, make you proud of some humanity, and make you disgusted by others. But not all heroes wear capes. How one Las Vegas ED saved hundreds of lives after the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. These are some of the dudes that I just wanted to put up there.
Yeah, it was the four docs on shift.
Mm-hmm. Kevin Menace, James Walker, Patrick Flores, and Michael Tang.
More than 250 patients flooded their ED.
Yeah.
And it was incredible how they kind of arranged that and got it going. And their triage tips, right? They're like, no, we're not doing tags. That takes too long. We're just doing rooms of colors, and how they kind of watched them. I thought it was inspirational.
It was very inspirational. I'd say they have some numbers here in the article, and they say controlled chaos by the numbers. 215 total gunshot wounds rolled in there. 137 patients discharged. 28 damage control surgeries in 6 hours. 28 surgeries in 6 hours.
Yeah.
67 total surgeries in 24 hours. That is.
The other part I loved about it was the team approach, because it's not just it's clear, like, the endpoint is trauma.
Right.
And that whole coordination between the radiology and trauma and the ER and the nurses and the people that came in and the janitors that were helping move people. So it's just like, it's one of those stories where you're like, that's how things work. It's
Yep.
because people come together as a team.
Yep.
And make the right thing happen.
Yeah, super proud. And that's a really good article. I think it'll be fun for people to read that. Let's go to the next one, even though I could spend the rest of my life on that one. Redesigning your ED for the threats of tomorrow. This one's just depressing to me. It's just depressing.
I was like, oh man.
It's like basically
it's gonna be not a light read.
How do you make your ER immune to being a thing in public in 2017? Like to being a place where people can walk into. I mean, it's the same thing. You could make a case of how to make your Bob's Big Boy,
your car,
or your
house.
car, or your house. So an interesting read, and some lessons learned from far off places.
What I took from this was, I still want my ER to be a relatively friendly place for people to go in and feel comfortable. It is a place of healing, but I also, just like Malin always taught us, like, hey, you're here right now. Where are your exits?
Right.
Where are your safe spots?
Yep.
Where are you going to go if there is an active shooter? Where are you going to go if there's a fire? What do you just thinking of like your layout and having that situational awareness, which I think is critical. Most ER docs have that, and so the staff, like, things are nice, but when things go bad, what are you going to do, and where are you going to go, and kind of thinking about it, I think is important.
Some of that stuff we sort of set up for ourselves in historically. So it's rare to go into an ER where you're not walking in the door and there's a page, like, they don't turn you around so you're blocked. So some of that stuff's already there, but an interesting read as well. And I thought worth.
They did comment though on how some of the ERs are going with like a more Google style kind of round table, and as opposed to the old school counter behind, and how that may not be in the best interest of being able to see everything.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like, okay, because there's this big push to be like, hey, let's make this super inclusive and open.
Yeah.
But
more sad humanity. This is like last few months have been, last little while has been a hard humanity. All right, the last article we're going to even go over here, night shifts. This is just do the next right thing. The subtitle is when burnout threatens, sometimes it's the hardest case that reignite our passion. I thought this was a really good article. I just read it now when you told me about it, and that's kind of true. I think sometimes having one of these things that happens is a good reset. I'm not sure if it's all you need, but it's a good reset.
You need a little bit more sometimes, but it's definitely these stories that keep you going. I mean, that's what I like about I like stories where you're actually maybe discussing points, but they're tied into actual real things that we know happen all the time.
Yeah.
So I think the more we kind of open up and share it. So it's a great story, and not sure if that's the only thing I can live on. I still need other areas of joy, but definitely it was an interesting story.
Yeah, it's a good.
I won't ruin it for you.
Yeah,
I ruined the eye diagnosis.
Yeah,
right?
You screwed up the eye diagnosis, and I was going to go over this story, but I think it's best to actually
you read it.
Read.
Pick it up and read.
It's really fun, and it's in the. I think it's going to be in the back of the print edition, and that's just a few. That's most of the articles in this thing, but that thing's packed, and I don't want to say that I have it always next to my toilet at all times, ready to be read, but I do.
It's one of those where I'm like, sweetie, don't throw that one away. You can throw.
That's exactly right.
The JCPenney catalog, I'm done with that one. Throw it away, but let me finish this one.
So they're put together a good thing here. I enjoyed getting the preview, and I hope we can do that again, and we'll figure out some way to make it less verbose and blabbing. Probably get you out of it. I mean, I feel like you're probably the worst part about it. I feel like
I can't talk. I can't even pronounce words.
Like, you don't even say, like, what did you call it? A chalazon?
Chalazon.
A chalazon.
It's like a burrito.
All right, this is Hippo Education for EP Monthly.
EP Monthly.
Thank you very much.